I'm with Catherine D. Everybody, welcome back to Walk-ins. Welcome. It's our yearly predictions and looking back. How are you feeling about things today on this day in January?
I agree with everyone that things are going to get weirder, and I don't think I personally, or frankly anyone else, is prepared.
In what way do you think things are going to get weirder?
The most basic way is we've been living in sort of like the social media era for a long time. I mean, for like I want to say like pretty much 15 years, maybe a little bit longer. And we're moving
Almost
out of the
20.
digital. Yeah, it's been a minute, right? And we're
Yeah, I
moving out of the
mean,
digital age.
Facebook was what,
We're
2006, 2007? Yeah.
Yeah. It's we're moving out of the digital age as we know it into a new technological epoch. So that is and I don't
In what respect? What can you elaborate on that a little? Like,
um
moving out of it in the way that they're less separate or that AI is gonna change it again or all
well
of the
there's a
above?
there's a lot of dimensions to, I mean, all of it, right? I think first of all the way social media functions is radically changing, right? This idea of like an influencer or public intellectual or talking head or whatever you want to call it, I think is going away. Um and we've been living through this like cycle where either people come from legacy media or another industry, right, or that they come from Hollywood, or they organically build momentum, and um, we know who these figureheads are, right, and they cycle out every 5 years. Some people have like they ebb and flow, like they'll go dormant for a little bit, they come back with a rebrand, they're even more powerful than ever, right? There's a lot of cases like this. um, but it's pretty predictable, right? The trends come and go. Sometimes the left is sort of cool, and there's a window for left wing media. Other times it's the right's turn, right? But these cycles of momentum themselves kind of nascent, right? Because before that we had traditional media. Um,
Mhm.
I think all of it's going away, right? And I don't quite know what's next. I think a lot of people were saying that the internet's so fragmented and there's no monoculture, and I always disagreed with that quite a bit. I mean, I always thought something like wokeness, right, to have succeeded in the way it did, there needed to be a cultural element, and so there was a monoculture. It just didn't present itself in the same way it might have in like 1975, right? Um, but now I think those people who are saying, "Oh, we're so fragmented," are right. Um, I think there's really going to be no monoculture. There's going to be no celebrity in the way that we've understood celebrity for the last little while, and who knows what the implications of more, more adoption of AI is going to look like. I think it's, well, one, people are obviously going to lose their jobs, but there's other like cultural effects that I think, like what does ownership mean in the age of
Mhm.
AI? There's all these like little questions that like keep popping up for me, and yeah, I think stuff is about to get really weird.
There was something too yesterday when the whole DeepSeek, thing popped off and everybody was talking about it, and a friend of mine and I were talking, and he was like, ultimately, there's gonna be this question of, like, how do you tariff an LLM? You can't.
Yeah.
There's how are you gonna do that? So I do think when it comes to the AI and, like you said, ownership and how they're scraping the internet of all of the content that everybody's uploaded for 10 years to kind of train on. Will they even need it? You can kind of train on, I guess the more AI trains on itself, the more it becomes gibberish, so at least now, so that's somewhat, it's like copying a copy, you lose quality every single time. So there's something kind of that gives me some hope that there will still be a need for original stuff, but, I was reading somebody saying that this is gonna be like the era of slop, like slop writing, slop TV, slop everything.
Right. Well, I mean, look, I think the white pill is you're right. So there becomes a market for things with a human touch, right? There people want to connect with people, and people have cachet. And I think you already see this a little bit on Substack, which I've like called the Etsy for words, right? You know, it's like Etsy stands against Amazon. Although Etsy now is flooded with weird shit from China. It's like really strange. But I find that on Substack, people are writing these like impossibly long essays that are just like so like just like breathlessly confessional, just filled with like personal details. And I don't know that anyone's reading it. I think people just like that there's this almost stream of consciousness fire hose of humanity that is in contrast to slop, right? Like a real person made this.
Yeah.
And I don't know that anyone's actually reading it or engaging with it as a work of writing, but they're engaging with it as an object created by a human.
Yeah, I think that there will be, now they have all these Instagram influencers that are all 100% AI and they're selling things, and I don't know that that will be as popular as people think, although I'm not sure that maybe right now for those of us who remember the difference, but if you can't tell the difference and you never know and you never knew there was
Yeah.
a difference, I guess it won't matter. But my husband was telling me about an interesting study around AI therapy, and he was saying people get benefits from it until they realize that it's AI, and then drastically the benefits go down. And so they've done these studies
Interesting.
that the minute they find out that it's not an actual human that they're interacting with, it almost loses all of the benefits that they were getting because what they want is real human connection. And I had Dr. Shedler on this podcast, and he's a therapist, a psychotherapist, and he was saying he said something really interesting that has stuck with me ever since he was on the podcast, and he said, "You can't scale human relationships. That is one-on-one, it takes time, it takes trust, it takes being uncomfortable. There's no way to scale that. You can be a therapist, and you can try and do BetterHelp, and you can try and scale these you can maybe be a therapist and write a book, and that's a way you can scale what you've learned, but in terms of the actual human connection, you just can't scale that, and I think this is a bottleneck that we will run
Well,
into.
I think people are really good at deluding themselves, right?
Mm,
Like people can, I talk to a lot of people who are in relationships with basically imaginary friends, purely fictional characters. It's become like a real recurring theme of my work in the last few years. And
mhm,
what that's shown me is, where there's a will, there's a way. Often people don't even need a chatbot, right? And even with
right.
a chatbot, it doesn't matter how short the memory is. Their imagination fills in the white space.
Mm.
So I think it would be nice. Like this doctor might be right. I'm going on anecdotal data, but um, I I think we will be really good at fooling ourselves, and the people who aren't good at fooling themselves will suffer. And I almost wonder, and I discussed this on my show recently, maybe it would behoove us to just start anthropomorphizing everything and say, it's inevitable. Maybe we should just treat objects with the respect we treat a person, and maybe that'll make the transition a little easier.
The transition to what, the metaverse?
The transition to like an increasingly isolated, you know, internet or digital rich life, right?